Everyone that is joining in has arrived and is ready to rock. So, as you guys know, we have Chantal, our amazing care specialist, physical health and wellness, joining us for our seminar today. She has put together an amazing presentation.
Hopefully
or we'll see, I guess. So she's going to be speaking with us a bit more about health and wellness, health and fitness, and how to kind of up our game in that aspect. So that being said, I'll let Chantal take it from here and get things started.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Hi to those people who I haven't seen in a long time, and to those I haven't met yet. So welcome. Thanks, Nicole, for having me. Those who've heard my spiel before know how I can easily get carried away and all passionate in my, like, what do you mean you're not moving? But so I'll try to keep it short and sweet. You guys can shut me down if I pass an hour and just close it off.
And your cat.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys are going to see some slides come along as I talk. I think those are just visual reminders for you. Hopefully, sometimes vision can trigger different things than just me blabbing and nagging you guys. But my first slide, I don't know if Brad, you have that up, but my first slide is motion is lotion. And honestly, I stick to that. I think bottom line is if we don't move, we will get very rusty. Next slide, and I think that's a true analogy. I think a brand new bike can get just as rusty as an old one that's getting used all the time. So I think I love that analogy. I think our bodies are definitely meant to be in motion, to keep going. I don't think it matters how old you are or how broken you previously were. So I think what I want to chat with you guys tonight, and Nicole, you've heard of my spiel a little bit before, but I think as caregivers of any type, I think we have a responsibility a little bit to also walk the talk, because it's, for me, it's a little bit of the irony when we show up to care for people's physical health, or not just physical health, but I think physical health is always an ailment of some kind.
Yeah.
And then we obviously can't even get our shit together, and we don't look very healthy ourselves. And I don't mean like, CrossFit buff, and I don't mean that. I mean it's some of us are obviously not doing the bare minimum.
General.
And I really like that's I think what we're going to cover. Like, what is the bare minimum, and what's the difference? What are people saying out there? What is and we've had this conversation before, and it was kind of interesting to me when I was talking to you guys just casually, like, what do you mean you guys don't know this? Like, everybody should know this. So that's what I'm going to cover today, okay, guys? Like, what do we mean by physical health? What does that actually mean? And so we're going to talk about how you can be better with your physical health, but we also know that if you're better with your physical health, inherently the person you're working with, providing care, is going to pick up on that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So let's take a couple of steps back. And if we look at our next slides, we look at defining the difference between inactivity and exercise. And I think, honestly, that's where people got really confused a few years ago. Mm-hmm. So I want to take a few minutes to okay, what does that mean? What's the difference between inactivity and exercise? I think exercise is somewhat clear, but you'd be surprised how unclear it still remains. So let's go to the first one. And let's look at what the World Health Organization tells us. And who the heck is the World Health Organization? Well, the World Health Organization, believe it or not, is an organization that oversees health in the entirety of the world, like all of the countries. And they look at trends, and they look at different things that are happening. And it's great because they can collect information worldwide. What they've done is they've definitely sounded the alarm with we're not moving enough, but they've actually collected even more information in the last 5 years, which I think are even more alarming. And I think the biggest one that I picked up, and that's, you can see that on the top of your slide, guys, fourth risk factor for premature death. Like, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. Like, in my mind, that's just mind-boggling. So it's like below, like, there's like smoking, there's drinking, and there's like eating your face off, and there's like not moving. And that's just crazy. That's above like working in mines. That's above like working with toxins. Like, it's just not moving enough now will most likely kill you before all the other stuff. And that's crazy in my mind. That's just crazy.
Scary.
It's a little scary. I think so. But, I feel like I feel like the people are still not getting the message. So maybe people aren't getting the message, I feel like, because maybe they've got this image of like the gym, going to the gym, this huge commitment. And I really think as a physical health therapist, taking care of people's physical health, let's take a few steps back and look at what I can do in my everyday to get those benefits without necessarily going to the gym. So if we look at the next slide, let's look at what sedentary means. So sedentary lifestyle, what do we mean by sedentary lifestyle? Well, a lot of people have done really great research recently. You and I were talking about it, and we were talking about it, those famous 10,000 steps.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I feel like everybody below the age of 50 should know what is 10,000 steps, but you'd be surprised when I ask people, like, hey, do you know this whole 10,000 steps a day? And people are like, no, what is that? And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? It's been around I think it's been around for almost 10 years now. Then certainly a lot of people have smartwatches, and that's counting. So I'm always shocked when people have like no clue at all. Like some clue is good, but no clue at all. But let's come back to what 10,000 steps. Did I give you my spiel about my 10,000 steps already? Because I'm about to give it to you again. So 10,000 steps a day came out way back when we looked at Japan, and we were like, wow, those people are so amazingly healthy. They're like 92 and they're still schlepping their groceries up the hill to their apartment. And how is that possible? Well, they looked more closely at it, and then they realized, wait a second, these guys on average walk about 10,000 steps a day. Now, I think at some point 10,000 steps came because it was like a really nice round number, and it coincided at the same time we were saying 10,000 hours for perfecting a skill. Okay. It's really something like 7,949 steps per day, but don't tell everybody that, because we really want them to.
It's actually less than 8,000.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to, but it's around 10,000. And what they saw is that at minimum, these people are doing 10,000 steps a day. So if they're doing 10,000 steps a day, it means they're not sitting a lot. Right? That's the first one. So people, we can say to people, reduce your sitting. Well, how am I going to reduce my sitting? Well, I think reverse that. Make sure you cover 10,000 steps in your day, and you won't be sitting that long. Yeah. Right? So I think that's the number one thing that we can think about. I think, so let's take an example in your caregiver day. Because like you guys, remember that I provide care all day long, right? So I'm in the same scenario. I go to people's houses, and I have to figure out in my day where I'm going to get my motion. And you guys know me, I'm on the road all the time. Like I can drive 500 kilometers in a day. So I better in my package know where I'm going to fit those 10,000 steps, because the thing is that's the minimum you should be doing. And that's above and beyond what we consider exercise. So if I today went and ran my 5K, that doesn't count in my 10,000 steps. I'm still supposed to cover 10,000 steps. So it sounds a bit overwhelming, but if you start slicing it up through your day, it's pretty good actually.
So how do you fit it into your business?
Exactly. So it's interesting because like I'm in the car all the time. So, and I have like my own benchmarks where like by midday I should be at 5,000. And I know my days now. I know where my days. Some days are lighter than that. So how do I fit into? So those who've hung out with me, I know a little bit. I'm a little bit crazy, but I intentionally park like blocks away. And if I'm late for a client, I will intentionally park further away so that I have to run to make sure I'm on time. And it's like a game. It's like almost like mini challenges I give myself. And you guys laugh because you're like, you can totally picture me doing this. Right? Like in the rain with my backpack. It's like, I'm going to make it on time. And so those are very typical ones. If I'm running into the grocery store on my way home, got to stop at the metro, I will park at the very back of the parking, and I'll walk my way to I'm constantly building it into my day. I go to a client's place and it's an apartment building. I am definitely going those stairs. I don't do stairs above 10 flights, but I will do 10 flights.
And then take the elevator from there?
No. Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but I don't actually have a client with 10 side, but I guess I would take the, I never thought of that. Actually, you just
Take
built
the first
I
10
didn't even
and
think about it. Oh, what? Usually if it's like too high with 10, I would actually take it from the bottom. Thank you for that.
There
You
you
see?
go.
But you'd be surprised at how easy it is to build it in. I think I've given you the examples before, guys. Like if for breakfast, I don't sit. I'll stand at the counter, and I don't want to, like, I'm bringing back the sort of the busy bee in me, right? Although I'm an easily a busy bee, but when I get up in the morning, there's no time where I'm just going to sit. I've been lying in bed all day. There's no reason I should be sitting. So that's the big one. Building in like little, I will purposely, like if I'm within my house, I will purposely, like, you know how people put stuff on their staircase to go up and down? I don't do that. I'm like, that needs to go up. It's going up now. I'm not going to wait till it piles up. I'm doing it right now. And when I'm doing the stairs, I'm doing 2 steps at a time. Like I'm just constantly, and I know you're looking at me going, you must be exhausted. You must be exhausting to hang around with. Like, I'm not totally exhausted.
Follow Chantal for a day.
Somebody said that to me, you're like, you're not very restful to hang out with. I'm like, this isn't supposed to be restful. So those are really small tips. So we can go on and on how to, and I feel like I repeat myself because I feel like a lot of these tips are already built in. Like you can Google this and it's like people build it in. So the big one, guys, is if you are covering 10,000 steps throughout your day, not front loading or back loading it, like don't get home and you're like, oh, I've only got 3,000 steps, better go walking. The 3,000 step is a wake up call to you saying, okay, I'm not covering enough. You know, coming back to your caregiver time. So within my sessions, I will make sure that people move. So, and don't underestimate people who are sitting in a wheelchair. Like there's nothing better for people to just like on a summer day, I'll be like, all right, our first beginning of our session, we're going outside for a walk. Of course, I'm doing the walking and they're sitting in the chair, but you know what? They're still getting the value of moving, believe it or not. And there was a study done on that, even from an electric chair. So if somebody's sitting in an electric chair and they go for a walk, quote unquote, along the canal, we tested this through the university, they actually are expanding energy and their heart rate actually goes up if they're driving their electric chair. So there's still a lot of energy being met.
And
so
improving their mood.
Yeah, besides that,
Exactly.
Besides that, like, so that's pretty impressive actually. So let's not underestimate that, right?
And it could be small, like you said, doesn't have to be taking your client for a 2K walk. No. It could literally be like, let's walk around the block, around the street.
Or like,
back.
You know what I even said? I challenged a couple of my clients who have attendant care people with them or rehab therapists, and I'll say, I challenge you not to park in the handy parking for a week. Park in the parking lot like everybody else and walk to the front door. And they're like, what? I'm like, it's beautiful outside. It's not icy. It's not busy. You're not going to be dead. Like, you know, like, and they're like, oh, I never thought. I'm like, is there a reason why you're parking in the handy all the time? So those little things, right? I think as caregivers, we can encourage that and make it fun, right? Like I'm always making it fun.
Yeah.
But so 10,000 steps. Okay, again, so you guys as caregivers are meeting that. It's going to be fairly obvious because it's going to be obvious in your demeanor. You're going to, because if you already think, you know, walking an extra mile to the front door of the grocery store, it's going to definitely feed off your client. Like if you think it's long, your client's going to think it's double long because they're going to go like, yeah, it's far, right? If you're going to go, yeah, but you're supposed to have the mindset of like, no, it's not far. It's going to be great, right? Mm-hmm. So that kind of thing. And we've seen that. We've seen the change. Like we've seen files.
Yeah.
So I think that is a good beginning. I think people definitely should check in. You don't want to invest in a Fitbit or a fancy watch. You don't have to. Borrow your friends. Do you guys know that these watches are great? Like, I have a watch that I literally just lend to people. I'll say, wear it for a week, come back, I'll download the information, and then look together. Let's look to see what your trend is. Because I think as soon as you figure it out what your daily trends are, you don't necessarily need the watch anymore. Mm-hmm. You've figured it out, right?
Yeah.
We had a great comment come in from Kristen Fairhead, who mentioned, my client always complains when I don't park close.
Oh, yeah.
So how would you approach that one?
Right, that's a good comment. So I think what I'm hoping to do with you guys tonight is empower you. Like, I think once you understand the importance of exactly that, like the difference it might make in your day, you'll be better able to sell like why you don't park close. You're not parking close because it's really, really beneficial to get those extra steps in every day. And I think I want to take, like I said, a few steps back, guys. I think people have this image of physical fitness as being sort of these CrossFitters or, somebody who's like, I play hockey 5 times a week. That's good, but that's not when the World Health Organization says we're inactive, they mean exactly that. We're parking too close. So I think as healthcare providers, at whatever level you're at, you need to start selling that. Yeah, it seems a little far, but we're gonna feel awesome. And you can't sell that if you don't believe it, right? Like you can't, so you might not have had a way to convince them because you weren't convinced yourself. You're probably sitting there like, yeah, why are we parking so far? But like, I think if you have like, yeah, it seems far, but it's going to be awesome. You'll see, you'll feel good. It's, it's great for circulation in your feet. Like, the effects on the body is amazing, actually.
And what about the approach of like, say they used to park in the handicap and like maybe you don't park all the way at the back of the parking lot,
you work your way back.
But we work our way back and grade that
exactly. And that's exactly like, so you baby steps, guys, baby steps. The people we work with, I don't know about some of you guys, but tend to be fairly broken, either emotionally or physically or both. So they're sort of hard to convince to make some of those changes, right? So I can appreciate that's like baby steps. Like, how about today? Like, or how about on Tuesdays we park further and on, like on the next time we don't, or switch it out. But you'd be surprised. I'll give you another example. If you're taking a client out grocery shopping, for example, and you're used to pushing a cart, how about they push the cart? Okay, for the first 5 minutes, I push the cart. For the next 5 minutes, you push the cart. Everything that makes it that much more slightly challenging is fantastic. And it just doesn't take much.
Yeah, like just little things.
It's just the little things. Honestly, and I think we forget about that. I think we've forgotten that it's the little
like you said, we have this image that like exercises.
It's
going to the gym and like this big concept and that feels overwhelming. So we kind of just stay doing it.
Because we don't do it. Yeah, exactly. It's like, wait, no, look, I can't do it. Yeah. So coming back to the 10,000 steps a day, let's say, so I've had clients where I have this lady, guys, and I love this lady because I've been working with her for like 5 years, and she's probably been my biggest challenge ever, like in my career. In terms, and you guys can understand this, in terms of how pig-headedness she is. This lady is not budging. Like, the amount of negotiating I have to do in my sessions has really taught me negotiating skills. Like, this lady, typically, she has now quit smoking, but typically would smoke like 5 cigarettes in one physio session.
Oh, wow.
And like, it would cut, and like this too, like, like very, like she loved her cigarettes. And I wasn't going to ban it because I think that wasn't the premises, but coming back to say, so recently she's been diagnosed with some very severe illnesses, congestive heart failure, stage 4 breast cancer, stage 3 bone cancer, and stage 1, I think, like, I can't remember, some internal cancer. Okay, so this lady like already wasn't great, and now we've gone like this. And so the doctors have said, you get your physio to keep you moving. And I was like, they said that? She's like, the only reason they sent me home is because I had regular physio that was watching how much I was moving. And I was like, green light. So I got a Fitbit for this lady, and I said, okay, here's the deal. Okay, if 10,000 is normal, then we're gonna aim for 1,000 for you. I want you to do 1,000 a day steps per day. It's gonna clear your lungs, whatever. The first time we put it on her, she cleared like 120. Okay, this lady really wasn't moving. But initially she was very angry at me because I put the watch on her, very angry. But it didn't take long, you'd be surprised. It didn't take long, and then we figured out a loop in her house between the dining room was 370 steps. We measured that, and then she could do between commercials. She'd get up and she'd know mathematically, I'm doing 320 steps. And our only goal was 1,000.
Yeah.
And we made a tremendous difference. Her sats her saturation started increasing, her heart rate started improving. The heart rate doctor was like, cardiologist was like, I don't know what you're doing, but it's amazing considering how much cancer you have. And it's only because we moved all day long.
That's amazing. Just
Yeah.
walking.
You're just walking inside the house.
Yeah.
And the joke was we put the leaf inside the dining room table, so I made it wider so she had to do a bigger circle.
Few more
Like,
steps.
honestly, it sounds really, and I'm like, if we made this table bigger, you'd have to take more steps.
No, but it's amazing that such a small thing, like walking.
Yes.
is
And I
making
see
such a
her
big
once
difference.
a week. I see her once a week. So honestly, guys, like, I want you to start being creative in ways that you can make it, even if it's a difference between, like, from the bathroom to the bedroom, I'm going to get you to walk, and then after that, you can be in your chair or whatever. Like, think of creative ways.
Mhm.
You'd be surprised.
Start small.
Start very small. You'd be surprised. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the other. So that's your sedentary. That's like, if I'm doing this, I know I'm not sitting all day long. Okay, and that's your bare minimum. So let's look at the other component of physical health. So this is one I think, like I said, that's scared a lot of people over the years, and it's the famous, like, exercise part of it. And man, the World Health Organization, but health organizations worldwide are like on rooftops screaming this, and still people aren't getting it. Again, it's not as bad as you think, guys. I'm not saying, like, drop down, do 22 push-ups while your client's on the toilet and you're waiting for the fish up. Like, that's not what we're saying, right? Because I think that's what people think, right? It's like relax. That's not really what it is. What it is, though, it's, and I do the quiz for people. I'm like, how many minutes a day do you think you should be physically active? For years, people were saying 16 is 30. It's actually 22, 150 per week. If people do not know the guidelines as healthcare professionals, if you don't know what the guidelines are, again, it's hard to walk the talk.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm not picking on you guys. You'd be surprised how many physios don't even know the guidelines by heart.
And I
Like,
know I've said that before.
Yeah, like I was presenting in PEI just recently, and show of hands of just physios, show of hands how many people actually knew the guidelines by heart? Half. And these are physiotherapists.
That's what they do.
Yeah, this is what we do. So I think somewhere along the line, I think it's come back to what you said. I think we've just scared people off, and people have stopped listening or even looking for what the guidelines might be. But it's easy, guys. It's 22 minutes per day. It's not very much. And it's 22 minutes a day only if you're, like, it's counted in as if your heart rate goes up by a certain amount. We're not even talking about, like, sweatbands and stuff. You don't even have to be sweating. You just have to be pumping it up a little bit. Okay. So for me, coming back to my daily craziness, if I know I haven't gotten close to my 22 minutes a day, I'll literally run up and down my staircase and calm. Or I'll do step-ups. Yeah, you guys can see me doing this. I know. Or, like I said, I'm running in between. I'm running from, like, one place to another, literally running on the sidewalk. Yeah. Now that's the level I like to take it up, but you guys know I'm a little intense, so that makes sense. But it doesn't have to be that. And remember, if your baseline is so low, rising your heart rate a little bit won't be much. Yeah. Okay, it won't be much. Oh, here's another interesting tidbit. I was sort of thinking today when I was walking on the sidewalk. So it's all measured by heart rate, like how much you can pump the blood through your body, because there's lots of benefits, and we're not going to go through that because everybody should already know that. But here's the thing. The fun fact. Walking speed is 3.2 kilometers per hour. Okay? That means nothing to most people. But I challenge you guys who have access to a treadmill. Get your butts on the treadmill this next week. Get your speed up to 3.2 kilometers and try walking at that speed. That's the normal speed people should be walking at. Okay? That's the the amount of people I put on a treadmill that practically fly off at that speed. I'm just like, people, that's part of the issue. Mm-hmm. So here I'm walking down the sidewalk earlier, and I'm thinking, wow, is it just me, or people have really slowed down? So here we've got the double whammy. People have slowed down a lot their walking speed because they're on their phones. Mm. So now we've got a double whammy. Not only were we already not moving really well, now we're moving like slower. Freaking snails, man.
I used to think that I just walked fast, but maybe...
No, that's the normal walking speed. Yeah, no, I was just going to say that. Like, if you want to test yourself, walk your normal walking speed on the sidewalk and see if you're passing people or if people are passing you. Yeah. No, like, you can't, like, we are actually programmed, like, there's a ceiling effect. Like, you break out into a run at a certain point, and that's at 3.5 kilometers per hour. Okay. So, like, there's no way you're walking faster than that. Yeah. That's actually the normal. Yeah. And so that's the scary part. So if you're one of these people who can't walk that fast, Bingo, that's your 22 minutes. It's easy, just walk fast.
Just walk back
And you
here.
got, see, I've got my work cut out because for me to get that effect now, I have to practically run a 10K to get the same effect that somebody. So, you know, I don't like the fact that I'm so fit because I have to work harder at keeping it, but
Yeah.
if you're not somebody who's fairly active, this should be fairly easy actually, right?
Speed walk.
Speed walk. And that's true coming back to the people or the clients we work for, right? Same deal with them. Have you guys seen me pull walkers? I've done that before. Like I'm going, we're gonna go whatever. Like somebody, this is somebody on a walker, okay, guys? And so yeah, like I literally will pull the front of the walker to make them walk faster. They're like, this is dangerous, and I'm like, this is good for your health. And so I will actually make them move, or I'll be behind them pushing them along. And so, you know, yeah, I know I still have people working with me after that, but it is really exciting to see the differences. And you'd be surprised. Like you guys would be so surprised. Like I challenge you guys to think of one thing you can do and see if you could influence it in that person's like week, and then sort of build on that. You know?
Something small.
Yeah, just something small. Like something super small. Like I said, this little British lady. Like last week the challenge was to move. Like she does toe taps on the stairs. I'm like, this week you're gonna step right up on the step. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, step right up on the step. Like it's tiny, minute changes that over time make such a difference. Okay, so coming back to your exercise, guys, so 22 minutes a day. The other component of it is, and you and I have talked about this, Nicole, before, is strength training. Now, in the guidelines, it looks like it says strength training, but what it really wants you to do, it really wants you to load your skeleton. It wants you to use your muscles so that your skeleton, your bones feel like it's loading. And you need that because otherwise you're going to get very osteoporotic, right? That's the number one problem. Yeah. And I call that skeletal loading. What does skeletal loading look like? That means carrying the laundry basket and the vacuum at the same time. You don't have to go to the gym if you do that when you go up the stairs. You do that a few times a week and you're good. But I think we've shied away from that.
Yeah.
We've totally shied away from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like I literally love that the laundry's in the basement because it forces me to load up stupid stuff on the basket, you know, stuff from the freezer, and I'll take this up, and I'm like, I purposely do it so I'm barely holding on, right? And it's like, yes, you know, because every time I do that, I don't have to commit to going to the gym. Remember that, guys. Like you guys are like sad that you can't make it to the gym, but if you did that, you wouldn't even have to go to the gym.
So talking about, and it's something that Chantal often talks about with the rehab therapist, is like functional fitness. Yeah. Right? Definitely. It's like your everyday activities.
Yeah, and that's not just me, guys. That's not like this is what these guidelines are saying.
Yeah.
They're not saying go get a gym membership or join CrossFit and stuff like that. I mean, listen, if you like sports, if you like physical activity, fantastic. Obviously keep to that. But the message we want to pass along to those who can't, because of course we work with people that are so physically limited. The message is, it doesn't matter. I'll give you another example, guys. I have a little lady, lots of little old ladies. Those are the hardest, eh? Like, would you agree those are the hardest?
A little bit set in their ways.
Mm-hmm. They're set in their ways. They're like, I'm like 88. What can this possibly do to my quality of life right now? So there's one lady, she had a stroke, like severe stroke on one side. And when I would visit her, I would go to her room and I'd say, okay, let's go to the open room where we do more exercise. But I would force her to wheel her chair in one side. And I would, obviously she can't steer it. I would steer it. And I'm like, you just keep pushing that chair along. And she's like, this is stupid. I know, just keep pushing. And I don't negotiate with them. Like, why do we insist on negotiating? Consent, in my opinion, is when you walk through the front door. Like, they let you into the front door. But I mean, you see me work. People think I'm hard, but I'm not. Like, I think it's joking. I think it's fun. I think if you're not afraid of them doing it, remember that is also much easier.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of the role is, especially in your role, is to push people, right?
Yeah,
if you just sat there and did what they wanted you to do and kept them in that nice comfy spot, they're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you got to push people outside their comfort zone. Yeah, supporting
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the more like we ourselves, like for me, I would say the last 10 years, the more I've spent time finding tricks of how to be more active and meeting some of these guidelines. Because guys, don't kid yourself. Like initially the 10,000 steps, like it took me time to build it in. Like I was a culprit like everybody else. Like, you know, the first time I put a watch on, I was hitting, you know, like 3,000 by the end of the day. And I had to make life changes. I had to make changes in my day to meet those. And there's no doubt I felt much, much better. I didn't feel nearly as tired at night. Like fatigue, you know, this big fatigue when you sit and you just want to Netflix watch. I wasn't even tired. So there's lots of benefits. So I get it. I get it. I felt like the more I problem solved in my life, the easier I could problem solve in somebody's life where it's way more complicated. You know, so it was big. Like another little old lady. We moved everything from like her pantry, all the heavier stuff in cans, and OTs would just scream at me. I'd actually move them up further. So they had to reach higher, and it was heavier to take down. Because it makes sense. So yeah, like it's reverse thinking in a way, because it's OTs. I'm not saying you, because you're not like that. Reverse OTs like to make things really easy, and those who've had OTs on their case files, you're just shaking your head. You're going, that's ridiculous. But I make it so it's that much more challenging. And it makes sense, yeah. It makes way more sense than saying, you know, let's like. I'm not dissing activity. I'm really not. But it's complicated. I was going to use the example of like we're trying to right now with a client, trying to figure out how we get him to the pool from Cumberland to Jack Purcell. It's like it's this nightmare of like how are we going to get into the pool? I'm like, okay, but how much do we need this pool? Because this is a lot of work. Like, could we not figure out something else that's just as effective and maybe not so elaborate? And the chances of that not functioning is higher than me saying, if you want to go to the smoke room, you better walk, because I'm not giving you your wheelchair. Right? So, and I know it's easier for PTs to say some of that stuff. So a lot of people have said that to me. Yeah, but when you say it, they listen. When I say it, they don't. I get it. So the next slide will show, so what do we know about just moving a little bit more? Like mood, you said it. I think the first thing to improve is mood. I really do. I really think we are less grumpy.
Yeah.
Even though like physically it feels so laborious to move, we just feel so much better.
No, I would agree, because I think like all of us can attest to like those busy days, you're exhausted, but you feel better and you sleep better, and there's just something, you know what I mean, versus those days that you sit around and do nothing.
Absolutely. And you know, like those watches, which are interesting, some of you guys who know about them, they also monitor sleep. So let's come back to my little British lady. What was interesting is I hadn't planned to monitor her sleep because I really just wanted, but interestingly enough, her sleep, so the more she improved, and she only went to 1,000 a day. That's in theory, that's not very much, but for her it was. Her sleep started improving, which was so interesting. I was like, okay, I felt like scientifically it shouldn't have had such a big impact, but I was even surprised. I was like, look at that.
And a lot of our clients, at least in my experience, like poor sleep and fatigue is an ongoing issue, and then they're afraid to move more because they think they're going to be more tired.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. And I think you guys who work directly with some of these people more hours a day than I would. I feel for you guys, because I think some of you guys spend like blocks of 3 and 4 hours. I'm there an hour. I think what you get caught up with is these guys are, the complaints of like, oh, but I'm really tired. Like, why would I do something that's even more tiring? So it's the sell, right? You're gonna have to sell it. You're gonna have to say, I guarantee you that you're actually not gonna feel more tired after. I mean, I think, and some of these people who really don't move at all, I don't know how much you guys know this, guys, but it's the reason they're tired is because there's actually not enough oxygen getting to their brain. Like, it's that ridiculous, right? It's actually called adrenal fatigue. So their adrenal glands they're spewing out a hormone because there's not enough oxygen to the brain. The brain has such little oxygen, it thinks it's going into sleep. So it's constantly preparing itself to go to sleep because the level of activity is so low.
And then that lack, it's like this vicious cycle. The lack of sleep causes you to not want to do anything, and then your mood is suffering, your memory, your attention are not where they used to be. It's like
it's just
everything
vicious, Like I'm just thinking out loud, guys, and I'm thinking of an example that I often use, like the infamous sit to stand. Of course, there's a lot of people who wouldn't be able to do this, but I've done this with people who even like can't actually come to standing by themselves, or I'll have to, but I'll be like, okay, let's say you're sitting there watching a show with them or something. The next commercial, we're going to do 5 sit to stands, you know, and you force them to pump it up a little bit. Even if you just have to crank them up. Like there's some people I literally practically whip them out of their chair and we do this together. Like that little bit is enough to offset that sort of lack of energy in the brain. And then I'm just feeling tired. It's kind of interesting, actually.
Just that little bit.
You guys would be so surprised. I'm excited to hear about you guys putting some of this into place and then coming back and telling me some of the little things you're seeing. Because you will be really shocked. I can't, like I'd love to have everybody just come with me all day long because you'd be really surprised. It's very interesting. I know people look at me like, yeah, but you're such in great shape. But yeah, and I know I'm a bit of an exercise junkie or an adrenaline junkie or whatever you want to call me. But I think it's because I've gotten so good at tapping into that energy. So sometimes when I have long drives, I'll give you an example. I drove up to Temagami on the weekend. I don't know if you guys know where that is, but it's like up north near Timmins. And on my drives, you guys will think I am crazy, but on my drives, I actually look for small towns where there's like a high school track. Because that will be my stop. I'll stop, I'll park my car, and I'll walk for like as many turns as I can. It's not a Timmy stop. It's not a Harvey stop. It's not a McDo stop. It literally, and I'll look on Google Maps and I can look because you know if you have like a Google Earth, I'm like, oh, there's a track in Mattawa. I'm stopping in Mattawa, and I've totally built that into my mind because those drives are like 7-hour long, and I've gotten almost addicted to them. Like I feel like if like, oh my God, I need to get out and walk. I need to shake it out. But it's really cut how tired I am when I'm driving. And it's interesting. I know people think I'm like I know where the tracks are: North Bay, guys, Mattawa, Deep River, Cumberland. I just keep looking for those, and they're easy. They're easy.
Yeah, it's true. It's like that's what it's made for, right?
Yeah,
you don't have to.
Yeah. Like you don't have to go. Yeah, you don't have to be that much more creative.
No.
I know it sounds completely crazy, but it is. Certainly, again, if you're looking for how do I get it done, that's how I get it done. I really look at little ways to stick it into my day. But the tracks I discovered about 2 years ago, it's just pretty funny. And because initially I was like, oh, I'll bring my running gear and I'll run, and that didn't quite go well. That was a bit ambitious, but I'm like, oh, but if I just got out of the car and walked until I was done walking and get back in, it's like, wow, I got like $1 million. Anyway, so that was my Temagami trip. And so looking at the next slide is the improved moods. So I think everybody can pretty much speak to that. What else are we looking at? So the other slide is empowerment. And it's interesting because the better physical health you have, and guys, I'm talking about small amounts. Like I'm talking about the difference between, I'll give you an example. Mrs. Smith, who couldn't pour her milk in her coffee before because the jug was actually too heavy. We've seen that. Like some of our clients are that, and now she can. You know how empowering that is? Like we don't think it, but it's very empowering. Like to be able to go from not being able to make your coffee and now I can actually make my coffee. Do not underestimate that.
Yeah.
You know, like again, when I say low skeletal loading, maybe for me it's a big laundry basket, but for Mrs. Smith, it might be like no different than now I'm actually going to make your glass full, and it's going to be a little heavier, and you're going to need a little bit more grip strength.
Yeah, like it's amazing. Like I always talk with clients about the sense of like loss and the loss of and that loss is not just around grief and that you've lost your ability to do certain things and there's a grieving process, and it's amazing to see when the smallest little like glimmers of hope or like they're successful at one thing and how that like empowers them to then continue.
It totally does. Like I'm amazed. Again, some of you guys who know me, I'm really good about the all by myself, because I think what some of our clients have taught us, the ones who are like, no, I can do it. There's very few of those, but they are out there. I think what they've taught me is, okay, I'm going to let you try it. And if you can't, I'll jump in only for that bit you can't do. When I watch these people glow with like with pride for having done that. I'm like, okay, how do I sell that to those who think they can't do it? So they can also experience that sense of pride, like, oh my God, I totally just put my jacket on by myself. Like, that's amazing. And it is amazing, right? It is amazing. So we need to get them. Are there questions coming in?
We got a good DM message, and it's about attendant care workers in the community who have very strict guidelines and tasks that they're supposed to be doing on the day-to-day. How do they incorporate this? Is it their role to incorporate this without overstepping, the OT case manager or who's on the file?
And that's a great question, guys. And Nicole and I have had this discussion many times, because you are right. You're very restricted. I find, unfortunately, you would say that
it
is very restricted in terms of how you build that in.
But I think it's looking at a creative approach. Like, we don't want to do something that's not allowed under the guidelines, but looking at where the OT has allotted funds and which categories they are in. So mobility needs might be one that, there's time under mobility. So, okay, mobility could include walking. So going out for a walk.
Yeah.
There's also time, a lot of files have time under comfort and security. So that emotional support. Well, what does emotional support actually look like? Could that be walking and talking and going for a stroll around the block, because that's providing that emotional support that they need. There is a category, it's not often used on the Form 1 for exercise itself.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want that. So no. I wouldn't, you guys have a good point. For those people, I would say you're much more focused on that inactivity or sedentary part. You're not working on the exercise, because I think that is outside your scope, and it certainly might even be outside the OT scope. But certainly the other part of just your basic activity, like just
meal
basic
preparation.
Yeah, meal preparation.
Like helping them to bring the groceries in, or
exactly. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, I'm trying to think of examples, guys. Maybe I need to hang out more with you guys to sort of problem solve, and I think that might be the next step. Is a day in a life in an attendant care. I try to be mindful, because I am around attendant cares a lot, but I think I might struggle with what the actual paper restrictions are. But I'd like to think, like, if you're coming in from the car from groceries, giving them something, making sure maybe there's a bag that's specifically light. And you say, okay, I'll carry these. How about you carry this? I can't imagine, you might be able to speak to it better, but I can't imagine there are strict restrictions against that.
No, that would be okay. The problem comes in where the role of the attendant is often to ease demands on the client. Right? So
it's a big catch-22.
It's a catch-22 in that the clients aren't required to participate. You know what I mean? Like, I always use the distinction of meal preparation to distinguish between AC and RA. It's like AC, the attendant could come in and prepare all your meals for you, and they could be doing something. They could be resting. They don't have to actually engage in the meal preparation.
Yes.
Whereas when a rehab therapy is coming in, it's meal preparation is a goal, and the client is engaging, whether it's cognitive goals or physical goals, that we are allowed to then push and be like, this is required. Some clients are really good and they want to be a part of it. Others aren't. So it's a delicate balance. Like, we can't be like, do this.
Right. And so maybe that comes back to, and I'm actually just thinking of this file, guys, which is a young guy, and he literally, when the attendant care come in the morning, he literally just sound asleep in bed and couldn't care. And I'm thinking about how maybe I, as an attendant care, would get him. Again, I would go with a certain energy. I would go like, hey, how's it going? Like, I'm going to be making you breakfast. Do you want to come with me, or do you want to join me? Like, do you want to keep me company while I'm doing it? Like, try to get them somewhat engaged. I think we do need to help. Like, I need to get my head around what the if you guys have actual examples right now, throw them at me, because that's probably the best way for me to answer that.
They sort of they followed up actually with asking for more actionable steps that they might be able to take without overstepping boundaries. So that might be something you both think about together, that how maybe you could approach that without stepping on the OT's
Yep.
toes, while also being actionable steps that, you know, they're not in there to be a PTA or PT.
Yeah.
But you're still in there to be a role model in what a healthy person looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what, so let's take 2 steps back, and we'll come back to you guys, hopefully to answer that. But I think one of my messages tonight is, you'd be surprised, and I think that might even be one of the slides, guys. Why should I care? So that's the next slide, the why should I care? What you'd be surprised is how influential we are when we ourselves look healthy. And again, I'm not coming back to the looking healthy like I look like I can do a triathlon, or, you know, I look like I ate beets for breakfast. You know, that not that healthy, but that healthy as in I have a pretty good balance between my physical health and when I eat, I feel good, I move well. You know what I mean? There's that kind of like, I hope that myself personally, as somebody who's already in their 50s, I hope I have that image.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I hope people look at me and go, oh my God, she looks so good for her age. Like that overall, she looks good. She looks cheerful. She doesn't look like she's struggling physically, even though I have my issues. I have my physical health issues. But if you embody that yourself, so if you yourself start just becoming a little bit more sort of physically able, you'll stand better. You'll just move better. You won't if you have to stand for a while waiting for somebody, either at the bathroom or the sink, you won't start standing like, you can barely stand because it's tiring to stand. Mm-hmm. We've talked about standing before, right, guys? Like, our bodies are made to stand for hours. So that's something, so coming back, so throwing that back at you guys, the attending care. So yeah, of course, if your client's in another room, you're not having much of an influence. But if the client's somewhat around you, make sure that you're eating well. Like if you're bringing your lunch, you know, like, I don't know. Like,
is it similar? Like, I know I've read before that, we have about 10 minutes left.
What? For the hour? Wow, you see? This is the kind of trouble I get into.
We tend to regulate, like with our mental health around those we spend the most time with. So if they're low, then you're low, but if you're hanging out with people that are high. So I'm wondering if the same concept.
I would totally agree. Like, there is we talked about this before, there's something called mirror neurons, and I obviously can't get into that right now, but it's basically part of your brain will captivate. So not only the mood and the energy, but also what people are doing. So if I'm standing or if I'm sitting without effort, okay, it's not even proper posture, guys. It's if I'm sitting without effort and it looks like I'm comfortable sitting without effort, the person next to me is going to start embodying that. Okay, so even if on those files where it's fairly tricky, even if you started just doing that, being conscious of how well you move or how much energy you have in or effort you put into how you move.
And I think this is a perfect opportunity, like, to talk more about, because like Chantal is the care specialist here in physical health and wellness, and she is available for you guys to pick her brain on these types of things, right? She loves this. She wants to make a difference. If you have a file or one, like a client that you're challenging and you're like, you know what, I'd love to do some of this. How can I do this without stepping on toes? Like, have a conversation, meet with Chantal, sit down, bring this to the team on how we could approach it, and we can make sure that we're implementing a plan that's not stepping on anyone's toes, but is really benefiting the client. Like, that's what her role here is all about, is to help you guys navigate the situation, empower you, educate you, and make care better for the client in the long run, right?
Absolutely. And we've had good examples of people asking me, and guys, I'm thinking, like, again, I'm not thinking even like these ginormous pictures. I'm thinking like one little thing, and you're like, if I tweak this, and I know, like, I've had even junior therapists come to me and they'd be like, what should I do for this? I'm like, oh, have you tried that? And they're like, oh, I didn't even think of that. I think over the years, I've just become really good at problem solving. So there's no stupid question. There's no bad example.
They mentioned that they'd like to see a physical health channel.
I was just thinking that, we created some of the other ones. So definitely we created a physical health channel. And I think one thing, like what you're speaking to, is this idea of like, we think we need to make big changes.
Yeah.
And what we've talked a lot about here at Spark is often, we think we need to make a big change, but it's just like, it's pivoting, right? Yeah. So we use that word a lot, where we're just like, we're making a slight turn and it's making a big difference.
Oh, it is.
Right? And I think we need to get it out of our head that we need to make massive changes.
Yeah, and I'll give you guys the example of sitting. I've gotten really good at sitting without a back. Like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but some of you guys would understand that it's actually really hard to sit without a back.
I was actually noticing. I was like, Chantal,
she's so nicely.
I'm leaning back. I'm like,
I don't
God,
think I know
do
how
that.
to. And it's funny because Brad, the more I'm sitting up straight, the more you're sitting up straight, and it's interesting, right? It's like feeding off, but. So initially, so was I able to do this for an hour before? Absolutely not. Like, you know, it probably took me a long time to work to this. You know, guys, and I'm totally going on a tangent, but my pivotal moment for standing and sitting, my very pivotal moment is if any of you guys are Orthodox or have been to an Orthodox service of any kind, they stand. Orthodox will stand. And I went to a funeral oh my goodness, guys. Oh, I want to say it's like 21 years ago because my 22-year-old, who's going to be 22 tomorrow, was just a babe's in arm. Wow, that's a long time ago. That was my pivotal moment where I was to stand for 3.5 hours at this funeral. And this funeral just went on and on and on and on. And I remember because I was breastfeeding back then, I felt like I was getting pretty heavy. It was like 3 hours into it. And I remember struggling through like, okay, if that 92-year-old lady can do it, I can do it, right? Like I'm 20 something. And I remember in that moment, I was always obviously a physical therapist by then, but in that moment I was thinking, no, everybody else is doing it. I should be able to do this. And it was really like a pivotal moment of like, wait a second. They know something I don't about the body. And this guy's, if you didn't know that at the age of like 20 something, I just came off being an elite athlete at the national level. I think that's what it was too, was a bit of a slap in the face. Like here I was, an elite athlete, and I couldn't stand at a funeral. There was something wrong with that. So it was really interesting. So from that moment on, I was like, how do we do this? How do we go from like standing 5 minutes, struggling to 3.5 hours comfortably? So that was such a great example of my life. Honestly, thanks for reminding me of that. You guys all brought that back. So quickly, because I'm running out. So the next slide, small changes make a big difference. Really, and I really can't emphasize that a lot, okay? Like, so you saying every commercial, oh, darn, Netflix doesn't have commercial. That's our issue. Yeah. Netflix doesn't have, well, actually, every time you go from, because you're binge watching, so every time you finish this, like one season, or not a season, one episode, you've got to sit for 10 minutes. I don't know. But you've got to build it in yourself. The more you build it in, the more you can creatively build it in for our clients, actually. But you'd be surprised. Like if I sit in front of Mrs. Smith like this, and I'm chatting with her as she's having her morning breakfast, it's going to make a big difference if I'm like, so, like I see a lot of these now. So Mrs. Smith, how's it going? And it's like, what message am I saying? Like I'm saying, I am super tired. It's been a long day, you know, and here I'm ready. I'm invigorated. I'm like, yeah, I've got some energy, right? Yeah. So it was a big difference. Absolutely. Sitting, standing.
Do we have any more questions that have come in?
No.
Perfect. So
and like guys, right? I'm here. I'm part of the Sparks. You guys have access to me, like Nicole said. So it doesn't end here, right? You guys can access me in whatever way.
Yeah.
I have one that came in about what the role of because it's changed the care specialist role over the last little while. They're seeing more in the kids side of things with Nicole, who's doing a great job. How does and where does Chantal's role fit in the fall? What does that look like?
So the care specialist role is changing a bit. We're trying to put a bit more structure to it. And Nicole Jacobs in the kids program has helped to kind of pave the way with that structure and is doing an amazing job. So the goal is for our care specialists and our care partners to consult with one another on files ongoing to see where the needs are. It's not to say that you as a caregiver can't approach them directly either. We just find that many caregivers, you know, we need an avenue to kind of get introduced and understand where the care specialist is coming in. So ideally they're coming onto a file based on a need recognized by yourself or the care partner, and they're going to come in and they're going to support you. So the whole goal of the care specialist is to help the caregivers to provide better care. So to educate, to help problem solve, to take their knowledge and expertise in their field to help answer questions that maybe their care partner can't, because the care partner is kind of the jack of all trades, right? They're running the show behind the scenes, but they don't have the specific knowledge and expertise on the different domains of health. So if you have a client that you think, wow, we could be doing more physical health wise, I'd love to see how I could do this for my AC role. Let's bring that up to your care partner. Let's join Chantal into that channel, get a coffee and care going, and pick each other's brains. She might even come out with the permission of the client and the team and chat about what that session looks like, to give some tips and tricks on how we can incorporate some basics of physical health.
Could they potentially get a training on the new differences, or maybe a webinar on the new differences between care partner, care specialist, etc.?
Sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like if you guys are struggling to have that in your head, then it's up to us to make sure that you understand it.
Yeah.
Because you can't, if you don't understand it, you don't know how to use us.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Like, we're there to use you, but if you don't know what I'm there for, then you're never going to ask me.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. We can work on that, because the whole point is that they're here for you, and if we're not doing a good job and telling you guys, how they're here for you, then that's defeating the purpose. So that's awesome.
Finally, we have pass on my thanks to Chantal. I was only able to catch 40 minutes, but it was amazing. Yay. Off for a walk I go. He.
That's inspiring change already.
Right? So I just want to thank you, Chantal. Like simple but powerful, right? And we'll get our physical health channel up and running. We'll get that distinction, help you guys really understand the care partner, care specialist, so that everybody's used to the best of their potential. And then maybe I'll also start increasing my step count now.
Maybe we should have a Spark challenge for step counts.
Ooh, I like it.
Ooh, by Christmas, right? We can do it like a.
Let's do it. That'd be a great incentive.
I'll take myself out of the equation for you guys.
Okay. You can be your team by itself.
Yeah, right.
Awesome. Well, thank
you so much, everybody.
And until next time.